Okay, welcome to Homeschool 101. I am so excited to share it with you guys today. I love homeschooling. It's been so fantastic for me, like personally, but also as part of my motherhood. And so I really wanted to share options with you guys. I know that sometimes we just kind of get onto the track of like, you have kids, you're home with them for a couple years, they turn 5, and then they go off to school, and that's just kind of the way that it goes. And sometimes we don't know that there's other options or other choices. So that's why I'm doing Homeschool 101, so you guys all know. So I wanted to thank Westwind Alternate, the Parent Council. They're sponsoring the event, so I'm so grateful for that. So I think most of you kind of know me a little bit, but I'll give you guys an intro. So my name is Lindsay Ranger. I'm the mom of 4 kids. We have homeschooled from the beginning. So my oldest is 11, so that's grade 5. So maybe I homeschooled for 11 years because I taught them everything, even when they were like starting to crawl, you know that? So that's 5 years of technically homeschooling if you start with kindergarten. So I never really planned on homeschooling. It just kind of fell in my lap, and as my kids were learning and growing, it just kind of seemed really natural for me. I know a lot of people don't have that experience, but for me, when it came to preschool, I was like, well, he already knows his colors. We don't need to do that. Why would I pay extra money to send him to something if he already knows it? And then I had the same problem into kindergarten. Well, that's not helpful. And for me, I had to have a reason to give up my time with my child. Like, it had to benefit them. And I'm sure that as they got older, public school would have benefited my kids in different ways, but it never outweighed the pros and cons in my family. So I want you guys to know that homeschooling is an extension of your parenthood. The way that you parent can be the way that you homeschool, and it can be very natural, it can be part of your life, and you are capable of teaching your kids. If you ever toilet trained a kid, you can teach them reading. I'm convinced of it, because that's one of the hardest things I've ever taught my kids. Oh my gosh, and I'm really glad to be past that phase. It's not easy. And I also want you guys to know that I am not extraordinary. I love myself and I am grateful for me, but I'm not like this super mom that's amazing. I am quite average. What I did, you're laughing at me, but it's true. All I did was I didn't feel like I wanted to go in this direction, and instead of just allowing myself to feel uncomfortable, I was reading and I was studying and I was getting to know my kids, and I figured out what I wanted, and then I took the step. And sometimes that first step is the hardest, but there's lots of different ways that you can learn and grow and figure out what you want to do. When I started, I read a ton of blogs, but now I'm finding that I'm not reading very many blogs, and I prefer to listen to podcasts. Probably because 4 kids is kind of crazy, and I can put on my earbud and I can take a little mini escape. So on your handout, I made it, the first page is just kind of to help you figure out what you would like for your home. So you guys are in charge of the home that you create, whether it's a home, maybe you guys love music in your house, maybe you guys are artists, maybe whatever you want. You are in charge of your life. So I want you guys to know that you can build it, you can create it, whatever your priorities are. Okay, so the first one is, what are our overall goals for home education? And you can just think of education. If you are already homeschooling, then you might know what some of the reasons are why you've chosen that path. And if you're not sure if you want to homeschool, I want you to think about education. Why are you sending your kids to public school? What do you want them to learn? What is your goals for your children? Do you want children that are amazing mathematicians? Maybe that's important to you. Maybe you're more concerned with work ethic or independence, maybe, like, I don't know, I'm not in your home and I can't decide what's important to you. And that leads you right, like your goals leads into your priorities. So you guys can take this home and think about it and figure out what matters to you. Now, since all of your kids are unique to your family and your situation, and guess what? Kid 1 is totally different than kid 2, and kid 2 is different than kid 3, and they're different than kid 8, or however many kids. They're all so different, and they're gonna need different things, at different times in their life. So when you're thinking about home education and kind of what direction you want to go, think about your kids. Is your kid super physically active and he needs to be moving? Maybe you need whatever he needs for that. Maybe your kid just wants to read books, or maybe they're in the middle and they are always covered in paint. So you, whatever your kids are, whoever they are, you can do that and let them be who they are. And then the last thing on that first page is, what am I excited to share with my kids? Sure, walk right in front of me. Come on in, we're happy to have you. So what are you excited for your kid, like to share with your kids? I know what I'm excited about, and some of it is pretty nerdy. I used to hate history, like hated it. It's terrible. And then I was an adult and I'm like, actually history is kind of fascinating and I love it. And I've had so many like, whoa, how is that? And how does this connect? And it has just made me so excited about learning. So that's something that I want to share with my kids. We also do a lot of kind of homesteading. So we do a lot of gardening, we do a lot of canning. And at this point, my oldest is 11, I can just say like, go dehydrate these, and he'll chop them up and go. And I'm like, I am so grateful for that independence, but also giving him the skills that he can do something that benefits our household. Like those are just some of my things. And maybe you're like, that sounds terrible, Lindsay. That's okay. Your home is not going to be my home. Not at all. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how all of our kids are different. Now there's different ways that kids learn. And I wrote a little bit of a list for you guys. So there's verbal. They like speaking, writing, listening. They like to read. Now this is really, sometimes I feel like this is the easiest to teach, because you can just give them a book and they can read it and they can understand it, done. It's not always that easy, but I feel like that's an easier one. You can also turn on podcasts. You can have a whole bunch of different ways that you can encourage that kid to learn. Visual, that's where you get charts, you get pictures, you get videos. YouTube might be your best friend. There are so many different ways that you can educate your kids visually. Kinesthetic, that's where they need physical movement. They might need a fidget. They might need to just be running all the time. I have a kid where I legit bought a mini trampoline, and it works so good for him to be bouncing on the trampoline, and I ask him his math questions and he answers them and does amazing. But if I sit him down at a table and tell him to do it, it is such a fight. He just needs to move, and I'm glad that I've learned how he learns best, because there was a couple years where I was just getting frustrated, and I'm like, well, I can't teach you when I'm frustrated, and you can't understand when I'm upset either. Like if you're frustrated, I'm frustrated, it's just not working. So if you find that if you're in like a tug of war with your kid, sometimes it's time to back up and figure out what you need, so that you can be in a mode for everyone to learn and feel comfortable. So the next one is mathematical. This is where they're logical, they like reasons, and they like to figure out solutions. Now I have a son, I think he is mathematical. He's also very linguistic, so he loves to read. But if there's not a reason for him to do it, he's like, this is a waste of my time. Which is tricky, because sometimes I'm like, you just need to read this. And he's like, why? I'm like, well, why? So we've had to change how we present that. So that's an important thing. Oral, I feel like I said that wrong. Oral, the one with music and sound. Okay, so some people love music. I have a daughter who loves music. But often, my kids that don't like music get overwhelmed by her music, so we have headphones on. So she can focus, but the other kids don't get overwhelmed. So there's little tricks like that that you'll learn with your kids to figure out how they learn best and how you can adapt your home. Especially if you have more than one kid, sometimes it's a little tricky to figure out how to balance the different things. But it can be done, and everybody has hard days, and that's okay. You don't have a perfect parenting day, you're not gonna have a perfect homeschooling day. And Sometimes that's really tricky because you want to have the perfect days, but it's not realistic, guys. We all have struggles. Okay, so then the other styles I put on here are interpersonal and intrapersonal. So some people really love group settings, and then some people are more independent. So your kids that are more group oriented, maybe they need a co-op, maybe they need a couple buddies to come over a couple times a week. Maybe they're gonna love doing family style lessons. There's different things. If they're just wanna work alone, intrapersonal, maybe they wanna work on the computer, maybe they wanna have a special project. There's different ways that you can handle that in a way that will benefit all of you guys. I found a quote about kids, and it says, if a child is poor in math but good in tennis, some people would hire a math tutor. I'd hire a tennis coach. And I love thinking about that when I'm trying to figure out what to do with my kids, because sometimes I feel like I want to lift all of their weaknesses up to the medium level. But you know what? I have weaknesses. Like as an adult, I'm gonna be strong in some things and I'm gonna be weak in some things, and there's nothing I can do to really change that. And I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't work on your weaknesses. Everybody should. But if we can work on our strengths, I feel like that's where our kids are gonna skyrocket, and they're gonna be empowered, and they're gonna feel like they can take on the world, and they're gonna be excited about learning and take the leadership over their education. Okay, so learning style or homeschool styles. There is a bunch of different ones. I wrote a little bit about all of the main ones. The thing with learning style or homeschool styles is I feel like sometimes people get pigeonholed into one style, and I don't think that that's always beneficial, because sometimes your kids change, sometimes you change, and you have to kind of figure out what works for your family. So give yourself grace and understand that it's okay to change your mind, it's okay to pivot, and we're all just doing our best. So I'm just gonna go through them really quick, but I wanted you guys to have something to take home in case you're like, hey, I actually really think that I like that idea and I want to learn more. I cannot cover everything about homeschool, so I'm just gonna give you a little interest, and then you can figure out what might capture your attention. So the first one I picked was Charlotte Mason. Now they do a lot of book studies, they love nature, they love doing handicrafts, music, really important, and a lot of narration. That's where when you read, then you have your kid say it back to you basically, and they learn that way. There's a couple books that I put there. Waldorf, that's a lot of art, folk tales, myths, nature. Montessori, that's the multi-aged. So they really love collaboration. They love to do hands-on things. They focus on like math, sensory, language, culture, and science, and they don't use a lot of technology. It's a lot of natural things, which is great if that's what you're into. World schooling, that is basically families that travel. Some do it full time, some take a month and go on a trip, whatever. There's different definitions of world schooling, but basically you're immersing yourselves into culture, into a language, you're trying new experiences, you're learning and you're growing, like on the go. So that's fantastic. Unschooling is often called child-led learning, so it allows you to follow your child's interest at their own pace. So I'm not a full-on unschooler, like I never will be, but that's just what works for me. But I do love doing a little bit of unschooling where I can. So we do a lot of unschooling for science. So if my kids are interested in butterflies, then we're looking up butterfly videos, we're making butterfly crafts, we're reading the books, like we're going to the library and we're getting out 50 books about butterflies and we're reading half of them or whatever the kids are excited about. And then when they are done with that, then we're on to the next thing. And maybe it's something like engines. Like it doesn't matter what it is, you can dive in, you can do experiments, you can learn and you can grow. It's a lot about building curiosity and making your kid, or helping your kids become lifelong learners, which is the goal. I mean, wouldn't it be so boring if we turned 18 and then never learned anything again? That'd be so sad. But some people do that. They never read or are excited about things. So unschooling also focuses on mastery. So they want you to really understand something and like love it, and lots of skill development there. So traditional homeschooling is similar to a classroom setting. So it's often where you've got a textbook and you're sitting down and you're filling out the answers. Sometimes there is tests or evaluations along with that. I put the link to the Alberta Learning Outcomes if you guys wanted to see what those are. You do not have to follow all of Alberta's learning outcomes to do a traditional style of homeschooling. Because we do, I use textbooks for math, but I would not say that I'm a traditional homeschooler, except that I use textbooks for math. So I will talk a little bit more about doing things like with the government requirements and the outcomes. A classical education, so this is methods that go way back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and it teaches your kids differently depending on the different stages that they are in. I do honestly not know a lot about classical education, but I do know that there's a lot of people that are really excited about it, and I think there's some groups in Lethbridge that follow classical. So if you have more questions about that, you will find another resource that can help you. And then the last one I have is unit studies. And I think unit studies is kind of what I do a little bit, that's unschooling, where you find something that you're excited about and you try and piece together different topics. So what did I choose before? Butterflies? So if you're learning about butterflies, then you're writing about the different butterflies. Maybe you're tracking their migration patterns for science, or you're going on a field trip. Maybe you're raising butterflies. Like there's different things that you can do. And I did kind of share an example here for you and a book. The other thing that isn't on here, it's not like an official thing, but I use a ton of games, and some people think that that's a style. I don't know. I feel like you can use games for everything. I did bring a bunch of examples. So we have games for math, we have games for science, we have games for social, and I've been building my collection my entire, like with all my kids. So I don't want you guys to be like, well, I don't have a game for that. It's okay, it's okay. You might have Scrabble, and you can do so many things with Scrabble. You don't have to feel overwhelmed, okay? Everybody start somewhere, and you just baby step. Okay, now, there are a couple different ways that you can homeschool in Alberta. So you can do supervised, or you can do unsupervised, okay? So in supervised, there's a few different options that you have available. So you need to choose a school board, which is basically your representation, who's going to, like, I don't know, the word I think is facilitate, or like be over you, supervisor. So you can choose a school board all over Alberta. There are some that are online based. We have a local one, Westwind Alternate School, that takes students. You could do Wisdom and Hope. Like there's, I don't know, over 50 I think. Like there's so many options. But when you're choosing a school board, you need to figure out what you want from a school board. Maybe you want something that will provide you with resources. Maybe you feel really excited about field trips. Maybe you want something that's secular or religious, or there's a bunch of different things. There is like a chart, so you can look at it and be like, oh, this is super important to me, so you can figure that out. So within the school board, there's often different programs that you can choose. There's distance education, which is often called, well, Westwind calls it outreach, and I think there's a few other terms for that. But that's basically where the government gives all of the funding to your school board, and in turn, you get resources and the assistance that you need, okay? Home education, which is when the parent is in charge, and you get just over $900 for the school year. And so you work with your facilitator to buy resources and find things that works for you. A lot of school boards, you buy it up front, and then they refund you, reimburse you, and some ones, they buy it from you, or buy it for you and ship it to you. So you can figure, it just depends on what you're looking for. But if you're home education, then you are in charge of deciding what you're going to learn about. And there is, I brought it with me, but there's a list of learning outcomes, and there's about 20 things that you need to to work on. And I can answer questions about that later on. And then the last one is shared responsibility. And in this one, you do part school and you do part at home. Western Alternate has a good program because you can do one day, and I think it's half a day for elementary. You get resources, and then you go home and you do lots of the work, and you are in charge of some of the subjects. Elementary, they do math and language, and then junior high, they do science and social.
Or math and English.
Or math and English, there you go.
And you get the fun.
Yeah. So if you choose supervised, you will meet with your facilitator probably about 2 or 3 times a year, just to make sure that you have a plan. They can check base if you're like, I really need help with this, they're there for you. I know I've asked my facilitator a bunch of questions when I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. So it's really helpful to have them. And then at the end of the year, you have like a final wrap up, make sure everything is good, that you've got all of the paperwork filled out that the government needs. Yeah, so that's all I have about supervised. But after we'll do a Q&A, so if you have questions, write them down, we'll get to them. Unsupervised, now this is one where you send your notification into the government and you don't get any funding. So I don't think I said that shared responsibility gets $450, so they split it between the school. Okay, so unsupervised, you don't get any of the funding, but you are in charge of your child's education. You can choose resources, whatever you want. You don't have anyone to meet with, but you do need to let the government know that you are homeschooling your kids. For me personally, I like having $900, that's nice, but I don't know if I would actually make any different choices with our homeschooling. Like, I feel like I would probably still do what I'm doing because it's mostly working, and that's the goal. There is kindergarten available for homeschooling, so that's $450 per kid, but that is only available as a parent-directed home education, so that means that you are the sole educator. That doesn't mean that you can't use co-ops or you can't do community classes, but you don't have a school to send your kid to for so many hours. I have a list here for books for parents. Now, a lot of these are homeschool books. Not all of them are. I feel like a lot of parenting philosophies that I connect with relate so well with homeschooling. So you're going to figure out what it is. And maybe it's not a single one of these books. That's fine. Find what speaks to you. I did find that some of them conflict ideas, and I love that because none of us are the same, none of our homes are the same. You are going to have to figure out what you want your home to look like and figure that out. And change when that's not working anymore. I also do have a list of curriculum. I try to pick a variety of things. So there's some that are secular, there's some that are textbook, there's some that are online. And this list isn't meant to overwhelm you at all. But I know that when I searched online, like when I was beginning, I was like, oh my gosh, there's too many options. And I just got overwhelmed and I just like, no, I cannot look at this. So I hope that this is inspiring you and to give you a little bit of a head start to get some things, and then you'll be able to figure out what you want. And I did bring a bunch of curriculum. After we do our Q&A, you guys can wander around and have snacks and look at everything. So that will be good. The last page I put on our community calendars. Now, every month looks different, every year looks different. There's lots of parents that are like, oh, this year I want to share this. And then, like last year we had a mother that she really wanted to do a field trip every month. It's fantastic. This year she's like, I am done field trips, I'm on to something new. And that's fine, that's fine. So this is kind of a very basic outlook of like what things looked like for homeschooling. I love the calendars because it gives me an option to be like, oh, you guys are going swimming? Yes, we would like to go swimming. And I don't necessarily have to plan everything. I've also really enjoyed being like, oh, they're doing a science class over there. I am kind of sucky at science class, so let's go over there and we'll do that, or we'll jump in and we'll do this. And so that's been helpful. And there's also lots of homeschoolers in Magrath, Cardston, and Raymond, like combined. There's quite a few of us. And so it's nice to be able to get together when you can or want to, and find people that you connect with. Because again, you're not supposed to connect with everybody. You cannot be best friends with everybody or have the perfect program that works for all of us. It just isn't possible. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and I hope you guys aren't feeling overwhelmed. I hope you took some notes and were able to feel like, okay, this isn't too bad. It's only like a couple steps to figure out what we want, and I'm gonna have a facilitator to walk me through, or I did, there's some support people on there, on the page with the curriculum, but if you're like, hey, I don't know what to do with this child, what do I do? Like there's chats you can ask, and there's so many wonderful moms around that will help you figure out what you'd like for your kids. Okay, so next we're gonna do our panel. So I have, you guys can come down, panelists.
Come on down.
Come on down. So I picked these amazing parents, and I picked them because they use different programs or they're different age groups, okay? Because I know that if I were to come to something like this and I have a kindergarten and they're just talking about high school, I'd be like, what do I do now? And vice versa, if you go to some place and everyone's talking about grade 3 and you're like, I have a high schooler, what do I do with a high schooler? It would not be helpful. So I'm gonna have all of you guys introduce yourselves. Okay, we'll start over here.
I'm Shirley Hardy. I live in Raymond. I homeschool under Westwind, alternate there, my group. I've got 10 kids. My oldest is 22, my youngest is 2. I've been homeschooling for 10 years. I've never homeschooled all of them at the same time. Okay.
I'm Cheryl Wild. I live here in Magrath as well. I have 6 kids, and we're with Westwood Alternate School right now as well.
My name's Jackie Fleming, and I have 3 kids. We live in Raymond. I am a public school teacher turned homeschooler. That is quite, yeah, I was going to say that is quite opposite, but yes, common. And this is our 4th year, and we're with Westwind Alternate School.
I'm Gabby Anderson. I have 3 kids. I live here in Magrath. They go from grade 6 to grade 12. We did parent-directed homeschooling for a year and a half, and then we did the kind with Larry Murray. You tell me what that's called.
That's home ed.
For a year, and then I didn't realize we were still homeschooling. But my oldest is in the outreach program because she does not necessarily learn from some of the public school teachers. So she learns through the outreach program for some of her classes.
And my name is Tim Eaton, and we've been homeschooling from the beginning, so about 16 years. We have 6 kids from 20 down to, 20. And down, she's on a mission right now, so I have 2 children on a mission, but 20 down to 10. And you probably can notice that I'm probably different from the rest of the crowd up here. And
Are you allowed to say that these days?
Yeah. I go he, him. No, but honestly, it's a valid question because 90 to 95% of homeschool, the principal homeschool parent is the mom. And that's our case too. My wife is definitely the I would say the expert as far as our home. But I'm unique in that I did a doctorate degree on home education specifically and wrote my dissertation on home education. And anyway, so I'm passionate about it too. So I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of the daily things as much as my wife or any of you, but the principles of it, I'm passionate. So I love it. Is there any other details you wanted on that?
I think that's just about it. I just wanted to add, I don't know if I'm in the frame.
You're fine.
Okay. I feel like it's so important to have like the husband, the dad's perspective, because I could not homeschool if my husband was not supportive. Like I flat out could not do it. I am so grateful for him. So I'm glad that you could come and share a different perspective, because I think we need that, and we need to know that you are a team, even if you are the main teacher, you can still rely on your companion to help homeschool and run a life and all of those things, your team. Okay, so you guys did an intro and you shared your school board. Okay, so why did you start homeschooling?
I'm embarrassed to admit that I initially started homeschooling because I thought I could create a superior educational experience for my children at home. That created a ton of tension for me. And the reason that I homeschool now is not necessarily because I think I'm creating a superior experience scholastically, but it is because it optimizes my opportunity to deepen my attachments with my children and enjoy their childhood.
I love that.
Yeah, that was a tough word.
Oh,
Okay,
my
sure.
turn. Why did I start homeschooling? I think I was always kind of interested in it, like, oh, should I maybe? And then it was COVID that they came home, and I just realized, oh, I can do this, and I love it. And so it was that time to continue building relationships and spending time together and seeing the light, like just the excitement of learning and experiencing that with them. And then I also really found it really personally fulfilling, that as I was educating myself and looking into things, that I was feeling really fulfilled as a mother and deeper connection with my children. So that's probably it.
So the two things I said I would never do, homeschool and get a dog. Well, we've been homeschooling for 4 years and we have 2 dogs. So never say never. Never say never. And both of them were very much divinely inspired, like a divine nudge / push. So we started during the pandemic. And my kids, though they had all their school supplies for public school, like labeled, everything. I have the cutest little picture of them just grinning ear to ear. And I just felt it like at a cellular level that I just couldn't send my babies. And I was like, oh, but I want to, because my youngest was going to go on preschool, and I was like, I get 2 afternoons to myself a week. Like, I was pumped, but it just wasn't resonating, and I pushed it, but then it pushed back. And anyway, I'd say talking to one of my dearest friends about that and hearing her validation that she was also experiencing that gave me the courage to break down my nevers into, okay, let's roll with it. And we haven't looked back. It's been, last time I used the word magical, and it still is, but it's also really hard. I'm not gonna lie. My gift to myself a few years ago was, my birthday gift to myself a few years ago was to stay at a hotel by myself. Not even my husband was invited.
I bet it was magical.
And yeah, it's just, so that's something that I really have had to change, is self-care. And having a village, I'm looking out at you guys right now, and I'm emotional because you guys have been my village and my emotional support humans. So thank you. You too, Nick.
Oh, thank you.
You're included, yeah, there you go.
We started because of the pandemic as well. The teachers were not teaching because there was a pandemic, so we started teaching at home. We just kind of dropped it and went from there. Lindsay helped me a lot, huge lot. We were having trouble in public school with my 2nd grader and bullying here in Magrath before the pandemic hit, and it actually pulled him out a bit, and Lindsay was watching him because I was working. And then the pandemic hit, so then we pulled all of them, and I stopped working and went from working mom to homeschooling mom for a few years there. And I'd still be homeschooling my younger ones if my husband was on board, but he was ready for public school. But outreach has been amazing for my oldest. She went back in grade 11 from homeschooling to high school. She homeschooled part of grade 7 all the way through grade 10. And then she's been doing part outreach with Mr. Goebel here in Magrath, and part, I don't know, regular school, public school. But Mr. Goebel's amazing. So if anyone's considering outreach and Mr. Goebel is their option, sign up. Yeah, he's great.
So I asked this question a ton of people because I have occasion to ask these questions to people. And for us, originally it was that we just wanted to hang out as a family. Like it was literally that simple. Our kids, we have, like I said, our two kids that are on a mission, they're just a year and they're 15 months apart. So when they were little, Sarah, my wife, started asking the questions like, so what do we want to do with their education? She just always asked questions, and I didn't. I was totally the in-the-box dude. I grew up in Chicago area and went to a public school. I would have never thought of something different if Sarah didn't start asking the questions. So our main thing at the start was, I think what it was that Sarah did not know how much she would love her role as a mother. Like she just loved being with them, and she didn't know that. Like when we were dating, I'm the 8th of 9 kids. She's the oldest of 4 brothers. Like she has 3 little brothers. And so we'd hang out with like my nieces and nephews, and she would be like, like pat him on the head, and I was like, is she gonna like kids? Like I was like about kids.
Oh no.
And so I was kind of scared of that, to be honest. And then when we had kids, she just did not know. I don't think she could anticipate how she would feel about them. And I feel like amongst, and sometimes this is a hard thing to say because it almost feels like it could cause ill feelings for somebody else. But the tie that I see about these homeschool mothers is that they have a desire to be with their kids a lot. And that probably sounds like marginalizing, but that's not what it's intended to be. Because some people are like, oh man, I cannot wait for them to go back to school. And that's okay too, there's different personalities. But she never wanted to do that. She wants them all the time and wants to nest with them, and that was our original thing. So first it was time together, but as we've evolved as a family, those reasons have become legion. Like they've become so many. I would say one of the biggest ones is the flexibility of the schedule, the lifestyle. One of the biggest things that we love is the time that's not wasted. And people will have a different way of defining that, but just the optimization, somebody said optimizing the time. And it's optimizing and just making the most of that time, and you are dictating how that time is being used. And so I think those were our initial attractions to homeschool. Mm-hmm. And I was a typical husband to be, and I can say that with research back behind it. Typical in the sense that I was later to the party. Because I was definitely one of those guys that was like, I don't want weird kids. I don't want, I was totally saying those things, which is so ignorant, to be honest.
And then you have weird kids. No.
Those kids are totally weird, and so am I. So I don't know what. But there's that stigma attached, and so anyway, I was the typical guy that was kind of asking questions. I wasn't looking into it. I was just kind of, being a naysayer until I finally came around and saw the beauty of it, in the fruit of what was coming out of our kids. So
I think I would say that most people go through that though, because homeschooling is not typically what we're told is the next step. So I think that most people are like, okay, what? You want to do, excuse me, give me more info. Or even as a mom that decided to homeschool, I was like, what am I doing? Am I capable? Can I do this? Do I know enough? Am I going to totally ruin this? Are my kids going to be illiterate? They're not. It's going to be fine. But you do kind of have to go through that mindset change. And for some people, it's quicker than others, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay, so our next, we're going to do a day in the life. So all these different people kind of use different programs, or I asked them to talk about different age groups. So Shirley's going to talk about life with littles, because that looks totally different than having high schoolers. It's totally different. Okay. Tell us.
Okay. Lindsay wants me to tell you about a typical day. And it would be more fun like Anne of Green Gables if I could tell you what I imagine my day is going to be like. But the reality is the day that I really have is different than the day I imagine I'm going to have. So I imagine that I'm going to wake up early and I'm going to take care of myself and be totally grounded before we go into all the family routines that will happen just nice and orderly. But anyone who's ever had a little child knows that that's not how life is, that life is called behavioral flexibility. That is how you succeed at life with little people. So I'm also grateful to have had enough little people and to have had them for so long that I can now experience that behavioral flexibility with deep gratitude. That I also realize that this is a precious stage and it doesn't last as long as I want it to. So if you're familiar with J.J. Heller, the songwriter, she's written a song called These Ordinary Days, and I just love it. There's a little line in there that just makes me cry every time. In a million different ways, you make me want to stay in these ordinary days. When you spill the water for the project that we're doing as a family all over the table, we're sculpting Bobber's like garden of the scattered flowers from India, and that's what we're making in homeschool, and she spills the water all over the table, and of course it's messy, never complains, just, oh, you're so cute, and I'm glad to have you here. And when I'm doing the laundry and you unfold everything and put it back on the chair, I'm just glad to have you here. Because it's part of what makes life joyful, but it wasn't always, because when I first started homeschooling and all I had were littles, and I didn't know that something else was going to happen, that they were going to leave my nest one day, and then all I would get is the text message saying, hey mom, here's how I did on my OChem final, that I was going to miss it so bad. So I'm just grateful every day to have the opportunity to see both ends of the spectrum at once. My day looks like, it really does look like me getting up early, and my husband is so supportive and good, and he gives me kind of the morning to myself when he's kind of he's taking care of everybody. So when they spill the syrup, he's putting them in the tub while I take care of what I'm trying to take care of, my exercise, my personal study, and the things that make me feel whole and ready to give to my family. And then as a family, we work together to clean up the breakfast and to do what we call school. And my older kids are kind of independent enough that during the time I'm taking care of myself, they'll do the kind of things that look like math and language arts too. They can do that pretty independently. Then we have cousins who live close by, and so the nieces and nephews come over and we do history and science together, and it's a big blast. We just have a wonderful time. They go home for lunch, and then I can have kind of one-on-one time with my kids as needed. And maybe that's the time when the piano teacher comes over, or we might go out for ballet lessons. But part of my experience as a mom of little kids is that I totally simplified. And I walk in here tonight and see friends I haven't seen in ages because I never go to anything. And that's okay. There was a time in my life when that would be hard and sad for me, but it's not right now. It just feels like, no, this is my season to just stay right here, and that's my perfect opportunity. And that's what I would say to any mom of little tiny children is embrace the perfect opportunity created by your real limitations. Because that's what your real limitations have created for you. It is a perfect opportunity. If you find what it is and embrace it, then you can do it with joy.
So how do you keep your sanity with toddlers? That's what I need to know.
Number one, I just love them. I've learned to love them and to laugh and to hold on to a sense of humor about it, right? But also, like I said, I've got a little support network, and twice a week while I'm teaching those nieces and nephews science and social, my sister-in-law is taking my preschoolers for preschool too and teaching them to read, and that is super helpful. That's really awesome that happens. And sometimes they play outside, and sometimes they play nicely by each other, and you can do something by yourself, and you get ready to be interrupted by that, and you decide that's okay. I don't know.
I feel like with my experience having little kids is you really do have to be flexible, and you kind of learn a lot of patience quick. And I always get the comment when people are like, oh, you homeschool? I could never have the patience to do that. Because I didn't have patience until I homeschooled with toddlers, and now I have more. But I don't have it all the time. But I also really love how you talked about community, because sometimes we do need a break, or we need a change, or we need help, or we need to say, hey, can my 3-year-old come over and climb your trees? And I say, yes, of course, or whatever. There's different options. For my little kids, I found that they really loved having something that was theirs. So if I'm working with my 10-year-old, then I needed this other kid to have whatever. Maybe it was coloring, maybe it was Play-Doh, just something that was theirs, but it wasn't something that I necessarily needed to do with them. So that helped me too. Okay, Cheryl?
Hey, so I think I'm talking about elementary,
Yep.
mostly. So I feel like it's kind of tricky because, again, this is something that really, really depends on the individual child, the season that you're in. Like, there's just so many factors that change, and I've seen it change for me. Like how my elementary went for my oldest to looks really different now, like with my next 2 elementaries. Because my older ones were really structured. They liked to have a lot of structure in bookwork, and my other ones they're not quite much that way. Like my son who loves to, he does totally different things. He's building things out of wood and cutting things and sawing things, and so his desires are a little bit different. So it really just, it changes depending on the kid, and you really just have to find, I've had to find the rhythm that works, and that changes all the time. So if I were to say what it looks like right now with my elementary kids is we've settled into having a bit of a morning routine, just doing our morning work, and then transitioning into our learning, more of our book work and sitting down learning activities. And then that'll usually take us to about lunch, and then it's outside time for them to be free doing outside stuff, and then they know that when they come in, it's going to be time to do housework, which means they often lengthen their outside time.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, and then so we do our housework, they participate in a lot of the chores, and then they've got their free time to spend after these things are done. That's kind of our rhythm right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, Jackie, you're next. Now Jackie she does the shared program with Westwind. So that means that she does, well, you tell them what you did.
So, well, the first 2 years we did the home ed. So it was pretty much like a back off, I got this. And then I realized I actually need more support than this. And so then they started the shared program. I wasn't ready to do PEP, which is more Alberta aligned, more involvement with the alternate school. So I wasn't quite ready to do that, and so they came up with the shared program, which is exactly like in between the two that I just mentioned. We love it. So last year was our first year doing that, and then with it being half, we got half the field trips, and we didn't get science days. And my kids this year, coming into this year, they're like, Mom, we want to do all the things. So I was like, okay. I'm gonna let go of some of my ideas, because I thought PEP would be more, I don't know, expecting way more out of me. And so it was my own things, like, my own reservations, but we have loved that too. So my kids love the field trips. My kids love, well, mostly, because sometimes it's hard for them to wake up early. Homeschoolers, am I right? But they love going to the alternate school, so that they go to class a half day a week. They love the option classes, which is for an hour after or before, depending on the grade level, when they go to school for the week. We love getting the resources for free. We love that, Mike. Keep that up. It's so great.
Just, you gotta interject though, that you have to return them.
Oh, yes.
Right.
If they have
I
a
used to get in
barcode-
trouble for that.
If they have a barcode, you must
You
return.
can borrow resources.
You can borrow the
Yes.
resources, yes.
Yes. They have loved that. They have, I shouldn't say loved, they have greatly benefited, how's that, from the tutorials. So your kids have the options to have one-on-one time with a staff member with math and LA, which has greatly benefited. What else? Am I forgetting anything like PEP? Oh, the science days. And then they do have some social with PEP too. So it's just been great. But I'm really consistent at being inconsistent. That's hard for me. Like, my husband's business name is The Finisher. He's a finishing carpenter, and I was like, if I had a business name, it would be called The Starter. Because
That's
I
why you
like
guys are such a
start
good team.
things, and then I'm like, oh, this is such a great idea, and then I run with it, and then also I have ADHD, and then like the novelty wears off, and so I start something new. But my kids run with it. Like, they understand me, and they can even fill in the blanks. Like, when I'm trying to explain something and I'm missing keywords because I've said it in my head but not out loud, they're like, Mom, that didn't really make sense, but I think I understand you. And I say, congrats, you speak fluent Japanese. Great.
Perfect.
So it is, I feel like Westwind Alternate School and PEP and Shared kind of help ground my creativity in a healthy way, because I am like creative and I love to do this and I'm, you know, all over the place, but then there's like this big part of me that craves that organization and structure and accountability. And so I feel like that's been the sweet spot for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I
Same
feel
with the
like
celebration of learning.
you
that's
don't
been
know
great.
what your sweet spot is gonna be
Yeah.
until you try it.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying that you have to try pep or shared or
Right.
just do parent directed, but I do think that sometimes you try something and you're like, actually I need some more support, like Jackie was
Yeah.
saying, and then you try something and you're like, you know what, we could do more.
yeah.
And it's okay to adapt and change, and
But I
there's
wasn't.
options.
I wasn't able to do more, right? At the very
Mm.
beginning, I couldn't.
Yeah.
And then step by step, like Toby, I remember the first time I met you, you tried to recruit me to school council, and I didn't have the emotional, mental, social bandwidth at all, and I was like, no, like Homer Simpson reversing into the shrubs, and like you were persistent. You asked me a few times. Anyway, you won because this year I did join, but I was able to because step by step, you know, and I have loved that. I have loved being on school council too.
Yeah.
So I just feel like you evolve, and I shouldn't like poke so much fun at myself for saying I'm the starter, because maybe I'm just like flexible. I don't know, but
I think so. I had the opposite experience. I started off doing the PEP program, and then I stepped away from it. So I'm like, I don't need that support. That's not exactly working for us, and so now we do parent directed. So you can start with more support, or you can start with less support, and you'll find your way, and it takes time, and that's great. Okay, outreach. This is gonna be a little bit different, because you've got public school, and then she just does the outreach class.
She did do outreach 1 year, just outreach.
Oh,
So I can tell you that too.
yeah. okay,
Maybe
close.
Mike can tell us what age outreach is for, because I'm not sure of that.
Grades 10 to 12, yeah, so
Okay,
high
so
school outreach.
Her first year, she was still being like taught at home too, but she did go to Mr. Goebel for science and math outreach. And what that looked like is he sends you his calendar at the beginning of the year, and you pick what days your child can be there. And he's got his own little classroom. It fits, I don't know, 7 or 8 kids at a time if he needs to do that. But he'll also do one-on-one with your child. So like with her, she really struggled with math. So he was able to do one-on-one with her for like 2 hours a week with math. And then she could also email him if she had any questions. And he was really good at like getting back to her and helping her in any way that she needed. He didn't teach her English or social, but he still was good. Like if she had questions that I couldn't answer, he was good to help her. For grade 11 and 12, she's been back at like the Magrath High School here, but she's done chemistry. She's done a few option classes with him, like foods and gym. I'm trying to think what other classes, but she's done a bunch of classes with Mr. Goebel, and because she does them with him, she has spares in her schedule. So then he works with the spares that she has, meets with her. For chemistry, it was 1 day a week he would teach her like the material, and then the other day later in the week she would come back if she had any questions on the material that he taught her. And that seemed to be pretty consistent all the years that we've had Mr. Goebel. She's graduating this year, but next year she's actually coming back to get her Chem 30 with Mr. Goebel first semester, because she really struggles to learn in the chemistry classroom here at Magrath. Because different teachers, different teaching styles, and she really connects with Mr. Goebel, so.
What
Yeah.
grade is she?
She's in grade 12 this year, so she's graduating this year, but she's going back to upgrade first semester for her chem. And she's doing bio in person next year, first semester.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
I really love that outreach can fill a need when you have it. Like, chemistry isn't working, here's an option. I had a problem with my chemistry teacher in high school, and I just sucked it up and did not do well. It was not enjoyable, like it was a crappy experience. So I'm super grateful that there is an option for when something isn't working. And you can do the same with a few different subjects. So if you're having a problem with language, then you can do that through outreach too.
Or even little things, like she was embarrassed doing PE in person. She didn't want to go do PE in a classroom with a bunch of boys. So she talked to Mr. Goebel, and he was like, well, we can do PE distance learning, which already fit into her life. Like she didn't need to do anything extra. She dances, she plays sports. It was very much this one thing, but everything else you're already doing for this class. So she loved that. She took PE 30 in person, did not like it, but did 10 and 20 with Mr. Goebel.
That's awesome.
Can I ask a question about this? Because outreach is just not something I understand. What about like resources? So what did she learn for these courses?
Like what
these
he
subjects?
used, I would say he taught in a very similar way to like your teachers here at the high school, but the difference being is she's getting a one-on-one environment.
So the
So,
school is providing.
Get a textbook.
Yeah, it was a textbook with like handouts from Alberta Education, but he taught her in a different style than she was getting in the classroom.
So outreach is aligned with the Alberta Learning Outcomes. So you will learn the specific topics that they are teaching that the government's decided. So that helps. Okay,
So can I ask a couple things first?
sure.
Like, I had a couple questions just about, so this is very relevant for you. What's the makeup of is anybody
Okay.
homeschooling already, or is?
We'll
We
do
are
a
in
hand
September.
raise.
We did during COVID. And
During
then
COVID?
We went back for 2 years and then we're actually pulling our kids and going homeschool in the fall.
Okay.
So has anyone never
Who
homeschooled?
has little kids? Like who wants to know about elementary? Okay, now where's our junior high school people? Who's getting ready for
Going
those?
into junior high.
Junior high, okay, getting ready, so there's those transition years. Is anybody else graduating kids? You're graduating. Yeah, so we have a couple that are getting close.
So it's all over. And then
All
are
over.
they going to be able to ask questions?
Yeah, so we'll do a Q&A after, I think we just have 2 more questions after
Oh, cool.
this. Okay, so, what are we doing?
My thing, my
Yeah,
spiel.
you should go.
So, and you want me to, so I just thought I would preface it with a couple of things, then I thought I would just tell
the
you.
day in the life. That's
Yeah,
what
day in
we're
the
talking
life, and then,
How,
so don't go to high school yet.
what do your high schoolers do during
Oh,
the day?
Okay,
How does their homeschool look?
okay. Okay, so before I would do that, I think it's important, like my style in any kind of setting like this would be to, first of all, just say that like your situation is gonna be unique no matter what it is, right? So Jackie's homeschool, and my personal, and I don't mean to wax so philosophical, but like, I just don't feel like homeschool is the word that works anymore. Like it's not always home, and it's definitely not school most of the time.
Our
And
school,
So I would call it like Cheryl's home or Cheryl's child raising or something like that. It's just so unique to the family. And one comment on the outreach thing, the outreach is awesome, but it's one way. Like it's one option of a million ways you can accomplish the same thing. So like you have a world of online stuff, and there's questions about online and how much you want your kids to be online. But there are professors and teachers in every subject all over the world, and so that can be overwhelming. But the idea is that there are resources all over the place to accomplish the same principle, and it's just a matter of tapping into those. So it's not like you have to feel like, oh, I have to go through this. Now, if you're doing the Alberta programs of study, then you want a diploma, then that would probably be an effective route. So,
yeah,
but
because your
Yeah.
kids, you do parent-directed for high school, right?
yeah, like, and
Yeah,
that's
so
where,
you choose
yeah.
what you're gonna learn.
Yeah, we've done just parent directed the whole time, and are we good? I don't even know if we're good at complying with stuff. Like Sarah knows that better than me, but it's basically it's just my wife's approach to education and my approach to education. And my kids didn't have a diploma, have been to university, and so I'll explain the day, life in the day, and then maybe tie that to those things. And I wrote some of these down because I'm not always home for the life in the day. But the principles that it's based on is like in the morning, our kids from 0 to now university have always known that when they get up, it's chores, and for our lifestyle, the way we do things, it's chores, scriptures, and then breakfast together. And then they will always go to their music and then math. So those things are always accomplished in the morning, but that's just our style, and that's evolved and changed over time. But those have been like the staples always, is that kind of routine. another part of that morning is notebooking, and so we do a variety of that. So the 4 that we really focus on is nature journaling, book of centuries, commonplace, and thankful journal. So the idea is for us not necessarily what you're doing, but when you're doing it. So Tuesdays is always that for our home situation. That's just and that's just been good for us. I'm always reluctant to categorize a homeschooling family because there's such a vast variety now. But I would say that we're probably more structured than we are unschooling in that sense. So anyway, then in the early afternoon, 11, 12-ish, is when my whole family, no matter what the age, so even when they were younger, like toddlers, babies, to kids in high school, we always have a time called Together Time. And that's where we'll do something that anything you can do together, and it's always involved a read aloud. And so there's a read aloud, there's just natural discussion that happens in that time. And then after that, the kids that are in high school or junior high, in the research, 90 to 93% of kids from freshman year, grade 9 to grade 12, are self-directed. They've just learned this, not always, because sometimes people shift from COVID or whatever, but they're 93% self-directed in that they are kind of sitting down with mom or dad and laying out a year, but then totally going through their own stuff. Like I can't do the material my high school kids are doing. And so they are doing that, whether there's an online component or on their own. All of our kids have done concurrent education. So we've done that through BYU Idaho, but there are tons of universities you can do that through. I know
Is that the same as dual enroll?
dual enrollment. So basically you're getting high school
Sometimes there's
credit.
different words and I'm like,
Yeah, they
what
call
does
it
this word mean?
concurrent at BYU Idaho. They call it dual enrollment all over the place. Lots of times people go to community colleges. In the States, it's huge. I think it's Texas and one other state, maybe Washington. Like almost all of their students have an associate's degree before they leave high school. So it's really common now. So anyway, the day is totally flexed, but for us, it's been those kind of key staples. And then there's a component of like the concurrent. The ones for the high school kids, I would just say it's like this. Like there's such a wide array of curricula that you can get your kids into. So if you are wanting to do programs of study and want to get a diploma, I would just say know why you want that. Like and begin with the end in mind. Work backwards from the university or the apprenticeship or the job they're going to go into, and work backwards, because why are you going to go through all that to get a diploma when it's not necessary for what they're going for? And that also opens up your curriculum like a ton more, because you don't have to be beholden to something. So for example, my son right now, he does seminary, which is everyone familiar with seminary? So seminary is LDS, it's just like a church class for youth. And then he does a stocks class with his grandmother, and he also does a language class with his grandmother, Farsi. And then he does concurrent classes through BYU. So he does chemistry and math, and then right now he's doing a humanities class.
He's learning
And then-
Farsi, is that what you said?
Sorry?
He learns Farsi? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
amazing.
and my wife is half Persian, and so
Very
her dad's
cool.
from Iran, and then my son's on his mission
So
speaking
writing
Farsi.
too?
Yeah, they're learning everything.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So
It's very
cool.
And then he does like an apprenticeship doing bike mechanics, and which is awesome. Like, and then he has just a job. Like I think those things when you get to grade 11, we're finding that our kids are done with the academics pretty much at the end of grade 11, and so the grade 12 year, depending on what you're pursuing, is either in our faith, it's mission prep, it's getting a job, it's playing sports still. My kids participate at the high school playing sports. Anyway, and then I would highly encourage like literature classes. There's so many good, like the Western Alternate, but like the Wisdom has amazing literature classes. But it's a world of stuff. It doesn't have to be local stuff, right? You can just tap into so many things. So
On the curriculum list, there's some things like OutSchool that you can do classes with, or Udemy, or there's a bunch. So it just takes time. I'm also going to share my day in the life, because I can. I am not a morning person at all. So my kids get up and feed themselves breakfast, and I am still in bed sleeping. I'm not joking. My oldest is 11, and it is glorious, and I love it forever. And then after they are done eating, they play board games. Now, the board games that we have in our house, I have generally chosen because they teach some type of skill or they're a good practice. And so they play board games until I'm ready to get up or until they are tired of playing board games and they come and wake me up, and it's great. Then we do scriptures, we do language and math generally. I'm really flexible on that. So I'll say like, how do you want to do math today? And sometimes it's like, hey, let's play Yahtzee and let's do some more math. I have multiplication games. Sometimes they want to do a book, or sometimes they want to play a computer game. I don't care as long as we are learning and growing and doing something that's challenging us.
And what's the age range?
So my youngest is 6 and my oldest is 11. So grade 5 to grade 1. Yeah, I probably should have said that. And then, so that's the morning. We are big readers, so I'll make basically a picnic every lunch, and we just munch, and we read books. We read a ton of picture books that fit my kids' interests, and then I also do a chapter book, generally. In the afternoon, that's when we go on our adventures, or we do community classes. We've done a ton of community classes this year, which has really been helpful for building friendships, and for trying new things, and for just doing stuff. So that's been great. And then we spend like after school hours with friends or sports, that kind of stuff. And then in the evening I also read more books. So lots of books, but the library is my best friend. So that's how we do it. Okay, so our next question, we'll do fast. Okay, how do you support your kids? So with little kids, how do you support little kids? How do you support elementary? How do you support your pet? Okay, as the parent, like how do you?
So if we're talking about my tiny people, I feel like the most important thing I need to do to support them is just build a secure attachment, period. That's it. So the way I do that is to be there for them and to love them. Like that's it, easy, done.
How do I support them? The thing that comes to my mind for that question is in elementary, I really want, like, as long as I feel like they've got their math skills and their language reading skills, I want them to just explore what they are interested in and that they love. And so that's why I try to support them, of like supporting them finding things that they love and being able to spend time doing that.
Awesome. I echo what they say. You talked about having a sense of humor. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of humor, and sometimes I forget that with my children. And I'm like, what happened to me? I used to be so fun. And then sometimes I'll just have a reset, and I'm like, oh yeah, laughter is the best medicine. And so I feel like being able to laugh together has been huge, and remembering to laugh. Because sometimes, like, I take my job so personally, like being my kid's mom. And I worked really hard to get them here. And so I don't want them to be a-holes. Like, I want them to be good, contributing members of society, and I want them to believe in themselves, and I want them to take risks, and I want them to want to be with my family. And sometimes I'm like, am I achieving these goals? Because I'm a bag sometimes, like straight up, I'm the a-hole. So, pardon my substitute swear French, but so like just trying to foster those relationships in our own family, but in the community, and we try to do service. The kids have little businesses, like all of these things, right? And we're learning Spanish together as a family. When I say family, I don't include my husband in that, and I feel badly, but he works. And so when I say my family, I mean me and my kids. And we go on learning adventures, and we just do a lot of different things in the home, but we also do a lot of things outside of the home, and trying to find that sweet spot too. Because I have some kids who are more introverted, and some who are like extroverted, and some who are ambiverts. I don't know if I made that word up, but
No, it's a real word. It's a real word.
yeah, me too. I used to be textbook
I have a
extrovert.
question.
Yeah, yeah,
So when your kids they're in the pet program.
yeah.
They're in the shared program. What do you do that program work? Like, do you get emails from the school, or
Yes.
what do you do for that?
Yeah, so just communication through the school, but also specifically from the teachers. I'm in the school ops, so then that, like,
That helps.
I used to be on the school council when I was on mat leave from RES as a teacher, and then it was cool to have a different role being on school council, and I loved it then. But then being on school council here, I was like, this is a really healthy relationship. Like, just being able to speak so freely, you don't have to worry about offending, like you can just talk about all these things. So I feel like I have a good relationship with the staff, and I can ask questions, or I can even just like say, oh hey, I have this thought, you know, and so we talk often. I think physically being there is really helpful, just like when I drop my kids off and say hi. But yeah, mostly emails though, I'd say.
Okay.
And the website, I need to be better at checking the website. But I really appreciate the reminders, like the texts and the emails and the in-person and the flyers. I need it all.
Communicate all the time. That's good. Okay, that's helpful though. Because
Yeah.
I feel like when you're looking at the Pepper Shared program, it's like, okay, but what's required of me?
Yeah.
And if it's mostly like, hey, you know what is expected to you, and the teachers are open to communicating and making sure that things are done,
Yeah.
that helps so much that you can understand what you're working on.
I didn't touch on this because with home ed and shared, you do meet with Larry if you're with Western Alternate. You meet with Larry twice a year, but with shared, you're also in communication with their teachers for LA and math, and same with PEP. And so this year, for the elementary school, they had celebration of learning once a month. That was very beneficial because the kids got to show their teacher for that portion what they learned, and then they were celebrated and they got food. So they, like my kids
favorite reward.
are motivated by food. I am too. And so that was exciting for them, but it also kept me accountable. And then junior high, you just touch base with John and Heather. So that is one way. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, how do you support her outreach classes?
My child doesn't do things independently, like she doesn't like to do her schoolwork. So Mr. Goebel makes sure that there's like a group email. So I'm in the email, she's in the email, and that way we at least are aware of what she has due. I don't think he uses Google Classroom. Maybe he does, and I don't know about it. But
Probably Hapara if he's using it.
yeah, he does use Para sometimes. But on the emails, he'll tell us like what she needs to accomplish that week, so then we can help her with like using her calendar and making sure she actually accomplishes what he says. This past semester, she actually did all her stuff independently for the first time in the 2.5 years she's been seeing him. So, but
That's
it's
exciting.
nice. So, but he'll give you the level of communication you need. So if you're like, my kid does everything asked of them, I don't need to hover. My second child is like that, so if she does classes with him, she'll be fine independently. But my oldest definitely needed some hand holding. But I think we're good now. But
That's
he's
awesome.
great.
I forgot, junior high does use Hapara for assignments and things.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Apara is a website that has different assignments on, and you communicate on there, right?
I think you can do courses on there too, because she did like this, she does a ski club every year with Mr. Romerl, and she has like courses on Hapara, so she goes in and does those. Same with summer school,
Okay,
when we've
so
done
that's-
summer school, has been
that's
Hapara.
Okay, all right. How do you support your kids? Now, this will probably look different because you are
Yeah.
not the regular teacher.
Well, yeah, and so maybe I'll say what I do and what Sarah does, because,
Okay.
and I would,
Can you just do you?
sure,
Okay.
sure. Well, I mean, I support Sarah.
Fantastic.
I mean, really, I think that really is, so what that looks like in day-to-day stuff, it would be looking at an essay that my kids wrote, it'll be supporting anything they do, but she does all the facilitation as far as finding and really researching what music teacher, and, you know, she's, like some of you guys have mentioned, she'll see an interest, and then she'll take that interest as far as the kid wants to. She'll get books on it, she'll just lay things. We probably align more with Charlotte Mason than anybody else, and Sarah really does spread the feast. And so that's the idea, is just a huge variety of topics topics and subjects and just lay that before them and let the kids, you know, do a ton of stuff. And so she does that. And so my job is to support. And I think depending on the personality of the wife will dictate the husband's support. So, for example, some women will not want the guy to come home and mess with their homeschooling. She just wants you to roll around with the kids and go out to the garage and work on stuff or something like that. Whereas some will say, I'm leaving now, you take the kids and hang out and work on these subjects with them. So it just depends on mom and dad and how they work out.
Yeah. It would be interesting if we all had our spouses here to see how different it is. Because when my husband gets home, I say, thank you, it is your turn, and I go and often like take a half an hour or an hour break in my bedroom, and he does dinner because I cannot make any more decisions. So he does that, and then often, lots of times, he does math with one of my kids because that kid doesn't want to do math with me. So I'm like, you are the math teacher, this is what he needs to do. But you just have to roll with what it is. So the thing that I thought about was supporting my kids is I do a weekly meeting with my kids. So I get out my planner and I say, okay, what do you want to do this week? Like, what's your schedule like? And then we figure out what they are interested in. And then that gives me generally a day to like, okay, if you want to learn about bats, I'm going to get a couple books on hold from the library, or I'm going to find some websites. And then I just print things out and I just put them on my desk so that they're ready to go. But it also gives me a good opportunity to help my kids learn how to be independent. So if my kid has baseball on Wednesdays, I'm like, okay, so on Tuesdays you need to make sure you have your uniform and write it in their little book. So that's how I support them, is by communicating and making sure that they are growing in their independence. Okay, so one tip. We'll start this way.
So, I mean, my knee jerk to that is by far the biggest fear amongst homeschool parents is, will my kids turn out? Like, for sure, that's the one where people are like, is this going to work out if I do this? And my tip is to chill, because without a doubt, unless you seriously
How do we do that?
just put your kids outside and leave them the whole day, it's going to work out. It just works out. There's so many ways to accomplish this, so I would say chill. Like, seriously, do not rush and take it a day at a time. It is fine. When people are starting to put their stuff before you and getting all tic-tacky, blow it off, man. And I'm serious. Like it will work out for sure. You are the best person for your kid, for sure. Like, that's it.
Trust yourself. It goes with his show. You can do it.
Therapy, like, I'm not joking. Like Oprah, remember, you in a car, like every single member of my family goes to therapy. And not always consistently, but just so we've like taken the stigma away. My daughter has a shirt that says, it's okay to have Jesus and a therapist too. and so yeah, so I just say, like, keep an awareness about your own mental well-being and your kids.
So yeah, one tip, so what came to my mind is kind of take the step, just go for it. You kind of have to start walking in that direction to figure things out. So this is, I guess, kind of tips for if you're starting. And along with that is, I would say my tip would be to educate yourself on educational philosophies. And I don't want that to be overwhelming, but I feel like it works well for me because it opened to my eyes to a different way of learning. That I think doing school at home can be really painful and be a real struggle. But as I looked into educational philosophies and looked into more ways of learning, like educating the whole child, the whole heart, and just different styles, that really helped me move forward and have a joyous homeschool that wasn't painful.
I would second everything that has been said there. That's beautiful, absolutely. The only two things I would add would be, number one, let your inspiration be vertical and not horizontal. These events are awesome, and if you're new, it can be overwhelming. We we can look at each other and I can be like, oh man, if only I were Brittany. If only I were Kara. If only I were Megan. Because I can look at you and see all that is awesome about you and all that you're doing. And if I try to mimic that in my life, it's gonna fall flat on my face because I'm not you. And so I believe in a divine design where somebody has you and your family totally in mind, and that you can get that inspiration, and that it can change, and that that's totally fine, and it's gonna be just right for you. And then the second thing that I would say is it has helped me so much to remember what I am responsible for and what I am not responsible for. There are things that are my responsibility, and there are things that are my child's responsibility. And if I don't mix up those two things, I am a happier, calmer person. If I try and take responsibility for what is actually my child's, things get messy really quick.
I love that. My tip would be to be flexible and to be okay with change. And then be okay with more change. It takes a long time to learn that skill, because you have to be flexible, like with yourself, but also with your family as a whole. And then if you look at each individual kid, they also need flexibility, and they need grace, and they need support, and it's gonna look different. Lots. Okay, thank you guys, you did fantastic. Okay, so now we're gonna do a Q&A. Do you guys wanna ask our panelists questions, or who do you have questions for?
Do you want this recorded?
Yeah? Okay, gotta be loud.
A question for Charlene that Angelina and I are wondering. She wanted me to ask.
Okay, Angelina, you ask.
So when you said examples of what is your responsibility and what is your child's responsibility, for you, I know this will be different for everyone, but what is an example of that?
So I am of the opinion that it is not my job to educate my child, that only my child is able to educate him or herself. And that it is my responsibility to show love, to provide an opportunity to talk about this, to inspire, to ask what are your goals, to stay involved, to provide resources. But at the end of the day, that child has to set the goals, and that child has to decide this is the path that I am choosing to take. And that child has to choose to follow through with certain things. And so when my child never attends his high school class, you know, and I get phone calls every day from this, that cannot be my responsibility. I can talk with him, but it has to be his. He has to own that at the end of the day. And depending on the age of your child, that might look different. But it is not my job to determine what my 22-year-old should study in university, and when he should go to bed, and which girls he should date. That's not mine.
But we'd like it to be, Mom.
Sometimes I would like to own that. But no, I don't get to. Does that answer your question? Okay.
But even like with younger kids, like it's my job to provide them with the resources and the things that they need. And maybe they're gonna decide to have a crappy attitude. Like I can't control that. It just sucks sometimes. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? No?
So, I actually have one.
Okay.
So when you do concurrent OSBY, like you start when they're 16, right?
Yep.
And so you do just what they call like paired, whatever, and so you just don't even worry about high school diploma.
Our two kids that have already been in university didn't have a diploma. So
Yeah.
your portfolio or transcript, and then their concurrent enrollment grades.
Yeah.
When schools, and this isn't just BYU Idaho, but
Yeah.
when schools have a college level grade,
Yeah.
they don't care about high school.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's typically the idea. But it depends on how many, and it depends on the rigor of that class. So there's lots of factors there. You know what I'm saying? Like if you took all religion classes, they're not that.
Yeah, I've actually taken some classes with high school students in them, and I was just wondering.
Yeah.
So then I have a question about that. Does that taking a concurrent class help them get in after they graduate?
So BYU
Depends where you
Idaho, you don't even have to take an ACT, you're just in.
As long as you do it.
As long as you
In high
are, as long as you are enrolled in high school And that might change over time with COVID, but you're just in. And then at BYU Provo, I'm doing these because these are familiar with a lot of people in this
Well, you
area.
also don't have to have an ACT to get into, like if you have a high school diploma, you don't have to write an ACT for BYUI.
Yeah.
So then it cuts out the need to get the 100 credits.
Well,
Which is what we're so
Not for
desperate
Canadian schools, though. Just so you know, Canadian schools have totally different requirements
Yeah.
than BYU. You will,
They totally
you,
do.
you,
Yeah.
you have to look at
but
very.
but not necessarily diploma, and that's a huge misconception that people have. Like in my dissertation, I interviewed people that were in the University of Alberta, and depending on what program they were in, they had to have a diploma, and some didn't require a diploma.
Yeah.
Like I taught, I had a girl who was in the engineering program, and the U of A engineering is one of the top engineering schools in the nation, and she didn't have a diploma. And so her transcript was so impressive. They were like, please be in our program.
I've heard a lot of that
You know?
actually. Seeking out homeschoolers because
Oh,
they
yeah.
know how to learn. They know how to
Yeah.
think.
If you look more into has anyone heard of CLT, the
Yeah.
Classic Learning
Yeah.
Test? When you start looking into that, and all of the universities now that are accepting the CLT, it's impressive.
Now, are those mostly American schools or
Those are,
Canadian?
as far as I know,
Yes.
those are all American.
If you're looking at
And they're mostly
post-secondary in
Christian.
Canada, I highly recommend you look at the program specifically.
Amen.
And look at what they allow. Some schools are not allowing homeschoolers. I have a 13-year-old graduating. And you'd be surprised how many schools won't take anyone under 16.
Yeah.
And
Including
so,
BYU Pro.
exactly. So you have, and so you really do have to look at each school, each course, each grade, investigate that. That if you can do that for your child, it will save a lot of time.
No,
But a
you have to
GED
be
is also an option.
And GEDs are being phased out, but Alberta's coming out with its own.
Oh, okay.
So that's something to keep in mind.
And just
So you
one
don't-
more tip on that is just like this. It's so common sense, but a lot of people do it. Just call the school. Call the school. Call the program specifically, and ask your specific questions. Because sometimes they have a policy on their website, and then they totally make exceptions. So just call. I would just say literally, and don't do an email. I mean, email it first, but talk to the person who makes decisions, because you'll see like there's ways around stuff. So.
Well, there's even options, like I know Lethbridge College is doing like a trades program where you can do different things there. And so there's options that are local. Maybe you don't want to be a tradesperson forever, but it gets you into the college, it gets you doing some classes, it gets you like in their
And they do a lot of
in their
dual.
programming and that kind of stuff.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What resources can you point us to for preparing a transcript?
Wisdom. Wisdom has tons of stuff online. There's a dozen different ways to do it.
So Wisdom
There's-
has
you write up
transcripts
your
like on
own,
their
you go along
website
with-
or through
Yep.
a facilitator?
On the line, online.
Okay.
And if you look at Judy Arnell, she has created a whole
yes.
program of how to high school through parent directed and
And lots of
everything,
transcripts
and lots of
too.
transcripts. And she has a huge resource
She's
on her
awesome.
website.
I do have Judy Arnell in the support on your paper too, if you're like, I do not remember the name. And she also has a book, Unschooling
Unschooling
to
to
College,
University.
or Unschooling to University, so that will have options and info for you too.
Do you know who Blake Bowles is? Blake Bowles is another. If you look up Blake Bowles, he has good resources. But as a principal, though, if I was responding to that, I would say, literally, one thing that would be really helpful for anyone is to document everything. Just document everything. Like have your own system and document everything they do. And I would encourage, especially for high school kids, volunteer work. Volunteer work is as good as being in a class. Especially if you're pursuing any professional career, volunteer work is at least par with a high-level class or a job.
Is that right?
They really look at volunteer, job shadow, those types of things. But just document everything, and then organize it your own style. But there are cool like you said, Wisdom that has tons.
There's lots of different ways to it. And
do
you don't have
you
to
guys
be
have-
with Wisdom. You can just use their format.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then just
It's just-
look,
yeah.
you could literally just Google homeschool
It's- yeah.
transcript. What do they call it? PDFs or templates.
That's good to know. I did get a question online about high school. They wanted to know, What do they do if their son goes on a mission when they're 18, comes back to 20, and then wants to go to college? Do they need to have done something in high school to be able to just go to college without a diploma? Or because they're an older student, what makes the difference?
Totally depends on where they're planning to go. So, I mean, I would call the school that they are planning to go to, or the potential schools they're gonna go to, ask the questions, and then especially for scholarship information, because some are keep open up scholarship stuff for when they get back, like any kind of LDS church school kind of opens that up. But some schools, they don't know about that, and so you have to do something ahead of time. So I would say call the school, call the program, and ask them specifically, because they might have like very specific things that they want them to do before they leave. So does that respond
If
to
you
that?
go to school as a 20-year-old, do you have to take the ACT? Do you know?
Again, it totally depends on the
As
school.
of school?
So
Okay.
to get a GED, you have to be 19, out of school for a year, and it's 5 courses
Oh,
to get a GED, and then that is comparable to a high school diploma.
okay, that's good to know.
5 courses only. It's
5
pretty
courses
simple. I was
for a
doing it with my
GED.
stepson.
And I would just say with the GED, I don't know if you guys grew up like I did, in like I was in the 80s, 90s area. I don't know what everyone's age is, but like, don't you remember when GED was like, that's what the kids that were messed up did?
Yeah.
The
Well,
grade
that's not what
dropout.
it is at all. It is actually equivalent.
It
Like,
was
it's a
grade
GED.
8 math. As long as you could
That's
do
what I'm
Pythagorean's
saying.
theorem, you could get through it. I'm like, this is amazing.
Well, my oldest brother,
So
Scott,
easy.
got a GED, and that was because he just screwed around or whatever. But like, a GED is a very bona fide, legit equivalent. It's not just a messed up kid or something like that. But people that always has had that stigma, and it's not accurate. Like, for admissions officers.
For
is what I'm saying.
admissions, but
For
the
admissions in
simplicity
universities,
is so
they're like,
much
that's an equivalency. It
That's
totally
good to
is.
know. That's really good to know.
So don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
Okay, Meg.
So this is a really broad question, but it's kind of a precursor to what you have just been talking about. What is kind of like, for you in your family, what is the process for helping a kid figure out what they want to do? Like, I feel like that's kind of the hard thing in my mind, is it's like a lot of pressure, like, what are you gonna do? You have to figure it out now. Does that make sense?
So how do you figure out what the
what
next
is the
step after high
process
school
for,
is?
like,
That you're interested
the stepping stones for getting to the place where your kid is 16 or 18 or whatever, and they're like, yeah, this is the program I want to be in.
And I would yield to some. I don't want to answer
I feel like
everything. I'm just
they
passionate.
kind of decide on their own. Like my grade 12, probably since about grade 10, she's been leaning towards like healthcare. She's like, oh, I'm really interested in healthcare. So then it's like, okay, what kind of healthcare? So nursing. So then she goes and shadows a nurse. Or my sister's a pharmacist. So it's like, go shadow my sister. I have a kid that thinks she might want to be a veterinarian. So we're about to call the vet in Cardston to see if he wants a visitor.
Oh,
And
he would love
send her
that.
there.
She would love
And like,
that.
yeah, and she goes to public school, but she's like, I think I want to be a vet. But maybe she goes one day and she's like, I don't want to be a vet. So I think just kind of seeing where their interests are, and then making those opportunities for them to kind of see what those jobs entail. My 6th grader legitimately wants to be an accountant and has since he was like in grade 2. He thinks accountants are really cool, and he thinks it's awesome that they sit in their office and they can listen to music and they type numbers into the computer and they help people. So like you never know until they actually like get exposed to those different opportunities, and they can do what were they saying, like job experience or work experience with their homeschooling programs and go and check out some of those different jobs.
And I think, you know what's funny about the kid in grade 6 is like, it's actually those kids that actually do, you mostly think like that kid's not gonna do that, but those are the kids that actually do, because they had that in their heads from the beginning.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, maybe as an example, like how many of you guys right here, or us, amongst us, like how many of us knew what we were gonna do in grade 11 or grade 12? So that's 3 people out of the whole group. And so that's probably really uncommon that a kid does, but here's how I would respond to it. I would say that they can make a choice on something without feeling like that's what they have to do. So I would say choose something, and anything that they're gonna go deep on is going to transfer to anything else they do. And it's going to like inform anything they're gonna do. And so for example, if a kid says, well, I'm not sure if I wanna be a dentist, So I would say focus on what you are truly interested in and into. Don't force yourself into things you're not gonna dig. Like, if you don't like it that much, don't get that into it. Get into stuff don't worry about the money aspect of it yet. Just go deep on something. Like, universities especially are looking, and people who hire are looking for people. I feel like we've said for years that we're looking for somebody who has, have you ever heard like people say they have a wide variety and they've had wide exposure? People want to see people that go deep. Like, they want to see somebody who is accomplished in engineering principles. So they want, this kid is totally into physics, and who cares how he did on literature or something else. You know, I'm not saying completely, but they want to see people that go deep on something.
If my dentist can write an essay.
Amen. And so and somebody who said it was like the unit study thing that packet was really good. In the unit study, it's because all of the things that you're learning on that one thing you're going deep informs every other aspect of education. And so it's okay, like, you don't have to know now, but choose something to go in on. And as soon as you start, I'm not saying as soon as it gets tough. Like, our kids should, you know, stick it out or whatever. And there's gonna be aspects they're not gonna like, but go deep on something. And then that will inform whatever they choose. They'll choose something. But if they go surfaced on everything, they're gonna be like what I did. I ended up in education. No, I'm just kidding. But honestly, I wish I would have had more tutoring about, like, really going into the thing I was, and then let that inform things later. So.
I also think it's interesting if you look at the stats on how many people are using their degrees. Most people do not use their degrees. They end up with something else. And I think sometimes you put so much pressure on getting the degree, and then it's the paper.
I forget about learning,
Yeah.
Expensive.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah. Okay, any more questions? You have a question? No? Okay, good. So what we're gonna do is we have snacks over here. We've got a ton of resources you can check out and look. We have the principal from Westwind Alternate School to answer any questions. He's got some paperwork of what the program is offering so that you guys can be informed. I'm gonna volunteer you guys to answer any questions. And there are other homeschoolers in the audience, so if you're, like, if we chat and connect, we're gonna find people that you have interest in. And if you're like, okay, well, my kid is in grade 3, say like, hey, I'm looking for someone that knows something about this grade because I don't know what I'm doing. We are happy to help. Or if you're like, I am looking into homeschool because we've got anxiety or we've got trouble with math or we're dealing with this, there are people that have probably gone through a similar situation or might have ideas to help you.
Can I interject one thing?
Uh-huh.
I've been thinking about what Tim said and what some others have said. A couple things. One, I'm pretty close to the oldest person in the room. Toby? And I still don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. Right? But I say that in a bit in jest, but it's not completely in jest, right? Still things I want to do, God willing, that I've got a few years left. The other one is, my youngest boy came home for 4 or 5 years, almost every day, gonna be a dentist, gonna be a dentist, gonna be a dentist. And we'd say, well, go shadow a dentist, right? Go check it out. Well, finally, I don't know if it was a year or 2 years after he was out of high school, he went and shadowed a dentist. One afternoon, came home, I'm not being a dentist. And I'm thinking,
5 years, man.
you dumb kid, I'm thinking, right? And not only that, because that was going to support me in my old age, right? Ka-ching, 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 right? But anyway, there we go, right? But now he's really happy doing some trade stuff and really enjoying it. You know, my whole family comes from the trades. And so it's, and then my own story, right? I've had 5 careers, right? And that's not uncommon, and it's not going to be uncommon. And so somebody said, I think, Lindsay, maybe it was you, we do need to be careful, because I think the schools do it to us, too. We gotta be careful about the kind of pressure that the kids feel about that, because you know what? It really isn't that important that they know when they're 18 or 19 or even 20 what they want to do or be when they grow up. And I like what you said, Tim, about give them the opportunities to dig into stuff they're interested all along, and that will take care of itself, I think. One last thing. There's a new program. It's called Southern Alberta Collegiate Institute, brand new. We've been doing a little bit of it for a couple of years. It comes out of the dual credit thing. Right now, in our division, we don't have a lot of spots, but our kids can certainly vie for some of the spots. And it starts in junior high, and they get to go to the college and look at a bunch of, and spend some time. I think the college has got like 30 days set aside for a whole bunch of kids to come in and go through the different things in the college. And then it goes into where you can actually take some specific courses in some of the, there's culinary, there's the trades, there's different things like that. And then for year 3, it goes into a scenario where you take the whole semester, your grade 12 semester, a grade 12 semester, and you actually go to college courses in that. So that's brand new, something that's really, really cool coming, so just to be aware. We've got access to some of that.
But it's a separate building, you said it's the barn?
The barn.
Yeah, so it's not
Yeah,
like.
they're building that. It's not done yet. It's still in a bit of a shell, but
And maybe,
that'll be where it's
maybe
housed.
one thing to add to that is just that one thing I've seen is way more common is auditing classes. So kids that are 17, 18, 19 are auditing classes. In other words, they ask a professor just specific at a university, and they go, hey, do you care if I just sit in at this class? And they just sit in, take the class without paying, they don't get credit, they don't get anything, but they audit the class. And tons of professors are open to that.
Have you heard of
And so you literally just take the class without.
See what it's
U-Bill,
like.
at the U-Bill, you can.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
You can also do
yeah.
student for a day at the U
I
of L
want you
if
guys
they're
to walk
interested,
away
and they'll
from
hook you up with a
tonight
student.
knowing that there's options. You have so many choices, whether you're doing little kids, whether you're doing elementary, junior, senior high school, like there are so many options, and sometimes we need to dig around and see what fits with your family or with your kids. And I want you guys to know that as homeschoolers, we know this is intimidating. We know that it's scary to take the step, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. We do impossible things all the time as parents, and you can do it. And in Southern Alberta, we have an awesome support system. So I don't want anyone to walk away feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so much, I can't do this. You can. You do not have to do it by yourself, and you don't have to do everything tomorrow. You can walk into whatever fits for your lifestyle. Okay, so, ta-da. Yay!